This is my penguin Eunie. I call him Eunie because he has a unibrow. He wasn't supposed to have a unibrow, but watch along, you'll find out why he does. I'm Mario from thewoodfather.com and I am brand new to wood turning. I'm just documenting my first few hours learning the craft. If you're new to wood turning yourself or you want to get into wood turning, watch along and you might find something of interest. To help give Eunie the right colour scheme, I glued up a Merbo and a messmate blank just to give it a nice light and dark timber combination. Normally I rip my blank into an octagonal shape using the table saw, but this time I wanted to try going from square to round on the lathe. Trimming on the table saw is much faster. I'll definitely stick to doing it that way in the future. Whew, okay, awesome. That made a bit of a mess, but at least now I've got a round piece of wood. Now I'm still trying to get more familiar with the scroll chuck, so I put a tenon on what would become the feet end of the penguin and then installed it into the chuck. The square edge cutter is, in a word, amazing. I've used this one now for probably over 10 hours of active cutting and it still cuts as smooth as it did when I first got it. I know lots of people have strong opinions over carbide versus traditional tools, but not having to sharpen them is such a huge advantage and just brings that learning curve down in a massive way. However, it is a little bit difficult to get a nice curve using this cutter, so I switched over to the round head, which makes it much easier. There is one more standard carbide tool for the lathe, which is a square cutter, but with rounded edges. I don't have that one. Yet. I must admit, I'm not really seeing a penguin coming out of this. I don't think this is going to be a super successful project at this point. Yeah. But I persevered. I thought it might look a little bit more penguin-y once it had a proper rounded head, so I worked on trimming that part down so that I could remove the tailstock. Now what I wanted here was to cut it down into a nice thin spindle point and then I'd safely remove the live centre. But instead, I got to this point, thought I'd make one more pass with the cutter, and then this happened. Okay, so that wasn't ideal, but I figured that I could just put it back in the chuck nice and tight and move on. Nope. So what has two thumbs, no penguin, and just got the crap scared out of him? This guy. So this catch occurred because I repositioned and retightened the piece in the jaws. It was ever so slightly off of the original position, so there was a tiny wobble. While I was cutting, that wobble caught the edge of the cutter and it went kabang. Honestly, pretty scary, but it fell down instead of flying out at me, which is great. I chucked it back up again and got on with it. This time I put the tailstock back on to help keep the little guy centered while I worked out the wobble. This worked an absolute charm, and I had no more issues. Yeah, it happened again. All right, so at this point, I was really close to the final shape, but I was also really close to throwing the whole project away. So I started sanding it smooth instead, and I only used the tools near the base where it was really well secured. Now there is a tiny little gouge here, which I could sand out if I keep going for a couple more minutes, but I think I'm just gonna leave it there, just as a kind of reminder of what went wrong with this little project. So that's the story of why my penguin has a unibrow. It's a living lesson for me. Every time I look at him, I'm gonna remember what I did wrong and resolve to do better. Eunie needed a nose, or a beak I guess, so this little point I'm making from a spotted gum scrap. After making so many mistakes on the body, I really expected that I'd have to make a bunch of these little noses. I expected them to break all the time, but I was pleasantly surprised it only took one attempt. Maybe I am learning. A little bit of glue and then some polish, and Eunie was finished. So what do you think? Successful project? I wanted to make a penguin because I've seen a bunch of them and I think they look super duper cute. They do, they're just a cool little project, nice little paperweight to have on the desk. I'm happy that I persevered through and finished this one off. I'm not overly thrilled with the end result, but on the plus side, this little angry looking one-eyebrow penguin is going to be sitting on my desk every day, judging me and reminding me that I need to practice.